Okay, this is SIG-cluster-lifecycle on Friday the 28th of July. This is the Friday meeting where we have a more in-depth discussion about the in-progress work on self-hosting upgrades and HA, probably in that order. So does anyone want to take it away? I haven't actually looked at the agenda yet. Tim?
I am working on checkpointing. I got on SIG-node's P1 list. So the code for the kubelet is amazing, and I am trying to navigate it. I have things stubbed out, and I need to talk with you, Ju, about some of the details. So
cool, sounds good.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad that you're stuck into that. That's really exciting. Good news. I can also sympathize because I did look at the kubelet code once.
You mean that once is enough, or?
Yeah.
there's something to be said, actually, just to give a little props to some of the work that Lucas has done. The continual refinement that has gone through and the shuffling of phases and all that other refactoring work actually helps a lot for readability. If we were to leave it the way it's the previous incantation was, it probably would have grown up to be the ball of duct tape that is some other aspects of the code. But I think that ability to just say, like, we're going to refactor it and we're going to shuffle these things around makes it much more tenable for long-term maintenance and readability.
Yeah, really, I strive to have as small packages as possible while still reasonable, like with these inputs and outputs of every phase. It's still work in progress though, but I guess that's why we're here. Justin had one comment about the time of this meeting. I think it overlaps with SIG-AWS. I think it says so, at least. Might be worth taking into account if we want to have those folks around here as well in some weeks.
While I was out, you guys tried to move it to Wednesday morning, and it seemed like that didn't work. Is there another time that would work for people?
Yeah, I have no. Well, for me it works this time or Wednesday, I think. Maybe 1 hour from now as well would work.
If we restrict the search for a second to 9 a.m. Pacific slots, are there any that work for everyone who wants to be involved as far as everyone knows?
The SIG apps is 9 a.m. on Mondays, which Lucas and I both went to recently and may have to go to again to keep driving the daemon set upgrade strategy. So that could be a potential conflict.
What about Wednesdays and Thursdays?
Wednesdays and Thursdays work for me.
Thursday does not work for me, but Wednesdays do.
Wednesday works for me. I mean, next week doesn't because I've already got something scheduled, but like in general.
Is there a reason we didn't stick with Wednesdays when we temporarily switched? It seemed like people were not able to make it.
Oh yeah, we did temporarily switch. Why? Who couldn't make it? Does anyone remember? Well, we could change it again and find out. Like, this is pretty much a core group here. Like, Aaron, are you available on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific in general for this meeting?
Yeah, Wednesdays should actually be fine for me.
I'm looking at Justin's availability when he was trying to plan the SIG, the kubeadmin adoption meeting, and he put that Wednesdays at 9 a.m. were a good time for him too. So believe he'd be able to make that time.
Should I just move it next week and ongoing? I won't be able to make it this time next week, but that's okay. Like, I'm not a blocker on this.
Yeah, I guess that would be okay for me at least. I think, like in this case, Justin is away on vacation next week or something. But anyway, I mean, in general, this time would work.
Oh, should we move it from, if Justin is the one who wants to make it but can't make it at this time and he's on vacation next week and I can't make it next week on Wednesday, then I should move it from the next week after that onwards.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a lot of words. Okay. Following events, send update. I've clicked the buttons in the calendaring. And now it's showing up twice. That's interesting. Calendars. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Please proceed. I'll carry on clicking buttons on the calendar while people talk about it.
Okay, so August 9th is our first Wednesday meeting. Next week we will still meet on Friday.
Yep.
All right. So I linked an issue here that Tim created 8 days ago, but we did not have a chance to discuss last week, which is policy for versioning on end-to-end tests. It seemed like this was going to be an issue related to self-hosting and upgrades that we should be discussing in this meeting.
Well, it doesn't really affect self-hosting and upgrades. It has more to do with features that were added in like the 1.7 timeframe and the end-to-end tests not taking versions into account. So I know Lucas tagged other people on it, but it was originally for testing because as we do upgrade tests and whatnot, there's always this, because I also work on SIG testing, there's this black hole around the upgrade tests that occurs. And a couple of iterations ago, we had issues where things were promoted from alpha to beta and the tests were not upgraded. So a lot of these tests failed and it caused a big consternation and there were many people involved. So the whole purpose of that is just when you add new end-to-end tests to properly version them with a version check. So that way, if they take that test suite and run it on a previous version, it doesn't explode. And vice versa, if the previous version gets run on the next version, it also doesn't explode.
Yes, we actually talked about this a couple years ago, and Zach Loafman from Google had suggested adding basically capability bits into the API server. So instead of strictly doing version-based checks to know when you should or should not be running tests, the API server would basically advertise like, I support this type of functionality, and then you could test the functionality that was advertised. And that sort of proposal never really went anywhere. I think there's still an issue open for it, but that would be a really sort of clean way to do this also.
Yeah, I don't think the version checks are terrible because we have pretty detailed lists of what new features go into, what major features go into a release.
Yeah.
So it was pretty simple to retroactively add some version checks for some things that we knew happened in the 1.7 cycle.
The current convention right now is just that you're supposed to use the same compiled version of the Kubernetes code base for the same version that you're testing. Is there like...
That's not really true. That's not actually what the upgrade tests do. So
the upgrade test. Okay.
Yeah, the upgrade tests skew in both directions. So we run old upgrade tests against current version and current upgrade tests against old version to test for backwards breakable changes and also for forward compatibility, right? So we do a one version skewed in the upgrade test right now.
So whenever there's an API change, it causes massive consternation.
Well, in some ways, that's the point, right? The point is that if the tests start failing, then you're making a change that is user impacting and maybe is a breaking change that you shouldn't be making, right? So if we start guarding tests saying like, oh, let's stop running this test, then we're sort of potentially opening ourselves up to an easy route for people to slip in breaking changes that are unnoticed if the reviewer is not on the ball.
That is kind of true, but API changes should be treated with such care, you know, that they should be treading very, very lightly, right? Because
I agree that they should be. I'm sort of reiterating. I mean, Brian mentioned offhandedly a week or two ago that he hadn't been looking at API changes, and then he went and looked at them and found 3 breaking changes like that people were proposing, and assumes that other ones have been slipping past as well. So I don't think anyone is necessarily doing a great job holding the line. And we rely a little bit on testing for that, because the tests have caught some places where people have tried to introduce breaking changes and they've gotten past the review process. So I'm not saying we shouldn't put version guards in. I'm just saying it's another way for someone to sort of more easily skirt the tests right now that would catch those sort of changes. So we just need to be a bit careful. So Tim, you were saying you didn't think that was sort of directly related to, I mean, I guess in my mind, it's related to upgrades, because if we want to actually build testing for upgrades, we need something like this, right?
Yes. Eventually, but that's like a post-process kubeadm thing, right? Like you've upgraded, now validate that your cluster still is okay, right?
Yes.
We do need to have that in place, right? And eventually, right? I don't know what version we want to take on that role. And there's other things I can talk about probably next week too that I've been working on related to this.
Yeah, I mean, I think once we say we support upgrades, we need to have some sort of testing. You know, I think minbar is manual testing, and ideally we'd have automated testing in place.
That goes back to the potential issue that Lucas, you CC'd me on, and whether or not Jacob has the ability to add the blocking PR tests and and add an upgrade test for kubeadm too as well as part of the test suite.
Yeah, Jacob updated the issue yesterday. He's been looking into the blocking tests and has a path forward, he believes, there that he's working on. So hopefully we'll get blocking tests soon, but somebody has to create upgrade tests before we can also make those part of the blocking tests.
That seems like it should be prerogative if we're adding upgrades for this cycle.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a definite requirement as well.
Yeah, I might be getting another person who I might be able to convince to do that. We're negotiating a little bit. So I'm hopeful. We'll see.
Yeah. So, I mean, the easiest, well, Fabrizio had a document somewhere about this, I think, as well. But, I mean, the easiest way we could get around this is just executing the upgrade phase, like in Kubernetes anywhere, like the up stage, we do both first and up and then upgrade, and like hack it that way. Like that's possible to do in 5 lines of code. If we have to like do the full, I don't know what's even required to first do the up phase, then test, then some upgrade, and then test again. How that's possible with test infra. But I mean, we could do a quick and dirty thing for 1.8 if we wanted to have pretty much the full coverage, but still not have to focus, like put 2 weeks on it.
That sounds like something we should keep in our pocket if we can't get someone to commit to doing the more thorough upgrade test suite.
Should we add this as one of the items for at the end of the cycle? I don't know if we're keeping track right now. We have a canonical source of the P0 items, but we should like burn down list. But
we should do that now.
We should probably like add that to the canonical list as we roll towards this 1.8 release.
I mean, I stuck it in the planning doc for 1.8 as like a P0 manual tests, P1 automated tests as like the sub deliverables underneath upgrades. But I'm not sure if people ever go back and look at the planning doc, or if we need to move those things into the issues that people are actively looking at.
we could do a quick pass of the 1.8 doc now if we wanted to. I mean, if it seems worthwhile.
I'm not sure if that's particularly useful in this meeting, because this meeting is sort of focused on just 2 of the items in that doc, right? 2 or 3 of the items in that doc. But I mean, we have 40 minutes, so if there's not other agenda items, we can definitely come back to that maybe later.
So just for clarification on the going back to the daemon set issue for self-hosting, we currently don't have a path forwards other than that SIG-apps wants to add a new strategy, but they haven't committed yet to.
Go ahead, Lucas.
So I think we have a path forward with like add a new, duplicate the existing daemon sets, then upgrade the real one, and then remove the copy. So I mean, we can work around, but it's not ideal. Or what did you think of?
That's fine with me so long as we like put a massive to-do that once we have the official, the more better upgrade strategy in place that we can remove it.
I may be slightly behind. Was there an update recently that changed the plan we had as in place as of Tuesday, where we were going to add a new update strategy to daemon sets?
Yeah, so that's the real way, but I think his question was about if it doesn't make it. Right.
Oh, okay. All right. So this is plan B, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool.
And then I think, Diego, you had started looking into that, right? May not actually be on the call.
He's muted, I guess. All right.
Okay, we can.
Oops, sorry, yeah. Yes,
Okay.
I just started looking at this. Yeah, I didn't see a conclusion really, but it seemed like people were leaning towards adding a new strategy.
Yeah, that was the conclusion as far as I know.
Okay. So yeah, I'll start looking at that probably early next week.
Anything in the comment, Robert? Do we need to specify more information? I don't know. I think that's.
No, I think we're in pretty good shape there. I think we have agreement from SIG-apps that if we write the code, they will help us get it in, as long as it's reasonable and doesn't raise their risk in terms of migrating to their new API groups, which is part of the reason we went with a new strategy, is because the code should be more separate. So hopefully that process goes smoothly. And as Lucas said, we have a fallback plan. It's not great, and we actually have a plan C, which is use deployments instead of data sets, right?
Or we still have to hack around with the API somehow, but we could even like make it a static pod in between or something. It's there are plan C and Ds. Yeah.
The API server is a bit of a special case because you kind of have to have checkpointing for it anyway. So it's that kind of resolves the issue for the API server, just not scheduler and controller manager.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool.
Yes.
Right. Next
up is a PR from Mike By the way, is Mike able to do this time, or do you know if he has something special?
I don't know if he has anything else going on right now. He has not historically been attending this meeting.
Yeah. So I was thinking about, like, does he even know that this meeting exists, or like?
It's on his calendar, so I think he knows it exists.
Okay.
But I don't think he's ever been to it. So.
No. Okay. So basically, he had a question. Please point me to where we discuss or document Cubase compatibility. That was not the SKU I knew we supported. When I said that we need to support, like, deploying if we have a Cubase client 1.7, we need to support 1.6 clusters, right? API service and kubelets. And this is documented on the site, like on the docs, Kubernetes docs, and also in the upgrades proposal. But we may, should we be even more clear, or have this in a canonical place somewhere?
Was that this meeting where we discussed and all agreed to that? Okay, policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we may want to also reiterate that during the Tuesday meeting, so everybody is aware that the plan is kubeadmin can deploy current and most recent previous minor version, right?
Yeah. And so, for example, I've implemented a check in kubeadm upgrade that if you are on 1.7 and have 1.6 kubelets, you can't upgrade to 1.8. It will error out.
Yeah, I had another note about that because the official version SKU policy for Kubernetes, I mean official in quotes, is we support version SKU of two minor versions for kubelets. So I'm not, even if the current version of kubeadmin can't deploy a slightly older kubelet version, I'm not sure we should be blocking people on a 2-version SKU. I think more than 2 versions is fine, but saying you can only SKU 1 version when we're doing upgrades may not be sufficient.
Yeah, so I was thinking if we can, yeah, I know the like official thing, but is it like, well, I still think we're gonna use some alpha beta features. I'm not, it was like until we have this nothing alpha-ish that we're using, it might make sense to like limit the SKU, but I'm not sure.
It'd also be nice to add a force type flag to override that.
Yeah. So there's a force type. Yeah.
Okay.
You can do kubeadm upgrade F, and it will ignore that error. But
So with your, outside of the control plane components, you still have the manual step for etcd, right?
yeah.
So I'm not quite certain what effects. Do you just drop the manifest file? Like how exactly does that workflow plan on working, right? Because I mentioned that comment in the original upgrade doc, and it wasn't quite clear to me still.
So I did update it. I think I notified, but I seem to have forgot. Anyway, the plan is, well, we could do it via the API by using a job, and it would basically edit the manifest file and just ping like localhost etcd that make sure it comes up. We might wanna, my plan at least was to gate this behind an alpha, like kubeadm alpha upgrade, apply etcd or something, like, I don't know, but yeah, so basically we'd had to somehow reason with it, but I'm not sure whether it should be in the main. I didn't include it in the like main apply flow because it's kind of risky. And Joe said that the normal user probably wants to like upgrade first the control plane, make sure everything's working, then maybe move on to like kubelets and maybe etcd after some time that they know that it works well.
Kubelets are much safer than anything else to upgrade because you can in-place upgrade them. But the etcd, I think having at least like a, I'm going to rewrite the manifest file. I don't know whether or not you want kubeadm or a job to do it. I don't feel very strongly against having kubeadm do it because the manifest, because that's going to be the only thing that's in static manifest still. And the kubelet will detect, change, and restart, right? So
well, it detects directly. So whenever you update the static pod manifest, it will directly reload, stop and starts.
There's a time window interval for it. Well, there's a time window internally. It's because I'm in the code now. So there's a time window internally for it to actually do the channel update for the kubelet actually updating. So it does detect, it does notify the main, and then it restarts it. So I think just dropping the manifest as a gated, buyer beware type of thing seems reasonable to me, unless other folks have objections, because you're just going to overwrite the manifest.
Yeah, so like why I was proposing a job was I was thinking about the HA. So I mean, we'd have to use it anyway because we can't assume that these files exist on disk, right? We know that, well, in most of them we do be on the same, like if we do kubeadm upgrade, we are on the master. But when we have multiple masters, we can't be on all of them.
Yeah, but we're not there yet, right? Like the purpose of 1.8 is to get upgrades in place and stretch goal of HA, right? Like,
yeah,
I think,
yeah, go.
Because if we don't upgrade etcd as part of this process or have it a clean mechanism for doing that, we kind of, you're skirting around one of the most important pieces of the control plane, right? So I think having, if it's hidden behind the interface from the user experience, I don't see there being a problem. I do then understand there's logistical problems depending upon whether or not you're HA or not. And if it's alpha gated, it's buyer beware, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think the logic will be exactly the same. It would just be like whether it's packaged in a job or packaged inside of kubeadm. I mean, I don't feel strongly, but I just thought that if we want to do a job anyway, like in one cycle or two, it might make sense to just do it now. I mean, it would be, but I'm fine to do it like say that, well, you can't upgrade if you're not on the master.
I'm okay with the job too. If you want to get around the multiple master situation, you just need to make sure it has all the parameters for the, what if somebody, here's the weird thing, like you'd have to on the node detect, because somebody might have configuration files that might vary from master to master if we're getting into the weird space, right? So then like, what if the manifest location is different? What if, you'd have to live detect on the system that you're running on in order for you to do it?
Well, one thing
with a job.
Yeah. So kubeadm explicitly, at least in the design doc, it says that supporting another part, manifest part, is not supported, like the etcd Kubernetes manifests, and it's hard coded inside of kubeadm. So I think that's
safe.
Fine to assume, but safe, yeah. But well, indeed, there are like a lot of corner cases. As always.
I'm okay with the job, but you're going to have a new build artifact now then, right? Because it's going to have to be a pod that gets built as part of kubeadm or something else, right?
So
is it going to be a job within kubeadm so kubeadm can have like, fork itself? You know what I'm saying, right? Because it would have to be either inside of kubeadm so that if we create a container, it's a separate thing, or you create a new job container that gets published, right?
Actually, I was thinking would be as simple as using BusyBox or something. But I mean, we could do it. We could say we can alpha gate the etcd thing in like kubeadm alpha upgrade and something etcd, and have it like manifest, like write directly to disk right now. And then it's still, we're keeping this like kubeadm upgrade that's not alpha gated is still like working on a directly like API driven. API communication is the only thing that's needed, like this kubeconfig file, admin conf. But then when we want to move etcd into that, or if we ever want to do that, I don't know. But when we do, we'll have a better solution. That's fine by me.
So long as we have the CLI experience, for and it's alpha gated, I think the logistics behind there can change, right? So
yeah. Sounds good to me.
I also stuck a link to Lucas's upgrade proposal that got translated from Google Doc into Markdown into the meeting notes. I dumped a bunch of comments on it a couple of days ago, and I know that Janet also, was it Janet or Yuju? I think maybe Yuju also took a pass. If other people have comments on the upgrade doc, we should probably get those consolidated so Lucas can upgrade or update the doc and we can get it merged.
Yeah, so I'm still in kind of wait mode to see if more comments drop down, and maybe after Tuesday I'll go ahead and make the changes needed. So after that we can get it merged. Where there's something, I'm looking through it now, where there's something to talk about here from.
No, I mean, this is the subgroup that is probably most interested in your proposal. And I would encourage everyone on the call to take a pass through the doc and make sure it's the design you think we are building. And this is the sort of canonical place where we are writing down our agreements about what we're doing. And by being present on this call, you are indicating a strong desire to be involved in the process. And this is probably the best way right now to make sure that the process we are building is the process we all agree to.
Yeah, sounds. But I'm like looking through them now. But there weren't any really like blocker comments here, right? It was more like nits or.
Yeah, no, I think it basically looked like what I thought it was going to look like, but I want to make sure everybody else has the same opinion.
Okay, do we have anything else for like upgrades? I mean, I updated my PR yesterday or something like that. And I'd encourage the people here to take a look, like download and compile or something and see what it looks like. I mean, right now it does everything but actual do the upgrade. So it's more like all these, in the end, I did end up with a lot of code, like more than I had expected. When I started thinking about enforcing all these policies that we have, like you must upgrade like kubeadm before this one and such things. But I think it plays out really well. I mean, it's a phase as it's in a separate package, and I mean, cops or whoever, CoreOS or anyone can use it. Like the CLI code is really small, a couple of lines for just the UX, like outputting the right text mostly, and all the logic and So that kind of stuff is in the package, the real package. But yeah,
I had a couple of comments on the Google Doc that you made, Lucas, about the UX. I don't know if you've shared that Google Doc more widely. Did you see that?
So I've updated a couple of times after that. I just I can paste the current version as well, where there's something.
Might be worth just putting that link to that doc in the notes as well, so everyone else can see it. And there's also one tiny thing, but I noticed that someone, when reviewing your pull request, suggested putting line breaks between the sentences because it makes it easier to review Markdown. So it'd be great if you could do that. Yeah,
so that's the Markdown converter's fault. I'll fix it up.
It's annoying, but I'm sure you can figure out like a regex for it in your text editor or something.
Yeah, I'll have to do that. I now pasted like what it looks like now in the meeting notes. What it looks like. It's not the latest version, but some iterations ago.
Yeah, could you do you have the link to the doc that I commented on?
Somewhere. It's... Okay, yeah, now I have it. So what we're talking about is just one dummy doc where I pasted the output from my CLI, and yeah, that's it.
I don't have access to that doc, FYI.
Maybe now, I think.
There it goes, yeah.
Some kind of race condition. So basically we have, well, I could try and see if I can share my screen. Wait.
Yeah, I mean, these weren't major bits of feedback, but I think they're important. So the first one was just that, like, I don't think users will understand the terminology 1.7 branch necessarily. That's like a Kubernetes developer term. What is the 1.7 branch? Oh, it's an implementation detail of how you release your software. Okay. So I don't know what would be better, like series, 1.7 series, or I don't know if there's an official word for like the series of releases that make up a set of patch releases within a minor release.
Well, that gets complicated.
Well, whatever it is, we need that word instead of the word branch. Then, like, when you say components that must be upgraded manually, you have to give the user some kind of indication of how. Now, that could just be a link to a document on kubernetes.io, or it could be use the package manager that you used to originally install these things to upgrade it, or something like that. And if people install the binaries themselves, then they're probably power users who know what they're doing anyway, and they'll understand that. But the majority case would probably be devs or RPMs.
Luke, do you think instead of saying branches, if we talked about like release tracks, would that make more sense?
Sure.
Or you just can understand, because I mean, we could just drop that altogether and say like latest stable version 172, here it is. But then what happens if you're going, like you're at 171 and there's a 172 and a 1.8, and how do you pick?
Having the language to be able to explain what versions are available to upgrade to, I think is important.
I've always used series, and this dates back to like kernel branching strategies like decades ago. So the
Cool.
2.4 series and the 2.6 series.
Sure. Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Sounds good to me as well. I thought that branch was a generally used word, but for this...
Such a hacker, Lucas.
No, it's generally used by developers. It is not generally understood by users, I think, is Luke's point. I would
I
agree.
see.
And then the other feedback I had was right at the bottom of the document.
Yeah, I made a chance. Yeah, that sounds good to me, to move the warning down a bit.
Yeah, I mean, just for the sake of everyone else. So whenever there's an error condition, I think the last thing that needs to be printed needs to be an explanation of the error, and also it should return a non-zero exit code. I mean, I can't tell from your Google Doc whether it returns a non-zero exit code already, but in case it doesn't.
Yeah, that's really important so that if other tools execute it, they can very easily tell if there was an error or not.
So do you think this should happen with plan as well? I mean, should plan return an error? I mean, this is the output of plan. It will definitely return an error if you try to like upgrade to 172 and you have 171 kube and
yeah, I think
not specifying the forced flag.
I think if apply determines that there would be an error if plan determines that there would be an error if you ran apply, then it should return an error code.
Okay, yeah, I think that's one of the few cases where that would happen, but where both would detect this, but yeah.
Right.
It should also return an error code if it fails to plan a plan. Sorry, what were you saying, Robert?
Well, at the bottom of plan, it says you can now apply the upgrade by executing the following command. If plan fails and says you need to do something else before you can do upgrading, it presumably wouldn't print those lines and it would return a non-zero error code, right? So if it fails to make a plan, or if while making a plan, it determines your cluster is not able to be verified, is not healthy, the config is not okay, if it can't, determine what version should be upgraded to, it should return non-zero code.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, I mean, first it just checks the health of the API server, checks that all nodes are ready, which then implies that there is a CNI provider installed. And then we have checking that it is self-hosted. If it's not self-hosted, it informs the users that it will upgrade. When you do the apply, it will upgrade your static pod hosted control plane to a self-hosted one. Or should we like treat that separate? I mean,
so in a self-hosted cluster, and we're ignoring etcd, you could theoretically run kubeadmin remotely.
Yeah.
Correct? But if you're self-hosted, or if you're non-self-hosted, you have to run it on the master node.
I never contemplated the running kubeadmin remotely use case.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it comes up because, I mean, if kubeadmin is going to be a more generic administration tool, it should be a client-side tool more like kubectl, which is cross-compiled for different client platforms. If we think kubeadmin is more of you only run it on machines inside of your cluster, so you always run it on a master, you always run it on a node, then maybe we need to change the scope of the tool and potentially change the name.
Yeah, I guess this comes up for the first time when we talk about the upgrade command, because obviously init and join have to be node local. Because there isn't a cluster yet, maybe, at that point.
Not join, just init. Join just like outputs a file. That's all.
But if you're not running that on a machine kubelet, like what good is it? I
mean, I think there will be a case in the future where kubeadmin will run just fine on Windows as well. Like the only thing is that it downloads a kubeconfig file or creates a kubeconfig file, and then we just have to like provide a package for Windows, and also of course some kind of CNI provider that works on both Linux and Windows. But
sure, but you'd still be running it on a machine that you expected to be part of your cluster, right? Like,
yeah,
I wouldn't run kubeadmin join on my Mac to get some machine running in Google Cloud to join a cluster. Right? On a machine in the cluster. So I think that's something maybe we can discuss in a separate meeting, but what the scope we think of kubeadmin is sort of over time, and whether it really is a tool that we expect to run just on cluster nodes, or whether it's a tool we think will eventually also become a client-side tool.
Yeah, so I'd say both, because like upgrade is or will be more useful, like generally useful. And also we kind of stage the Bootstrap token thing client in kubeadm right now. It's like kubeadm token. That could actually be a good kubectl plugin now that I'm thinking of it. But
yeah, I mean, I guess that's my point. Is like we have kubectl, which is already client-side tooling. We have kubeadmin, which until now has always been on host tooling inside your cluster. And we need to figure out what the future of both those things are. Are we going to start building more client-side tooling that will run outside of your cluster for administrative purposes? Would it make more sense to build that into kubectl itself? Maybe behind a kubectl admin, subgroup. And I know OpenShift has an OpenShift admin command that's separate client-side tooling, but it is not meant to run inside the cluster. It's meant to run like kubectl outside of the cluster. So just kind of a meta point that we should start thinking about as we're adding features to kubeadmin, is whether that's the right place to put them, or whether we want to restrict the scope of the tool or sort of expand the scope of the tool.
Yeah. Sounds good to me to discuss that, like in the general SIG meeting.
Yeah, maybe I'll put it on the agenda for Tuesday.
Yeah. So let's see if I can share my screen and we can talk about whether this makes sense. So here is the latest UX. If you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yep, cool. So kubeadm, and it's alpha-gated, we'll just move that command later in the cycle, has some some flags, allow experimental upgrades. I think this will be a useful case for this is of course for more devs, I want to upgrade. I made a cluster sometime and now I want to see what's new in 1.8 and what's exciting here. This is my test cluster anyway.
Is that also a way to get release candidates potentially for end users?
Yeah. So we could define whether we could actually make those different, like to allow RCs or something. We could have experimental like alpha beta and have a separate flag like allow release candidates.
Yeah, I mean, one problem we have right now, I think in general, is people don't actually run release candidates. So if there was a way to better expose those, it would be nice.
Yeah, that's really useful feedback. I can add that pretty easily if you think it's.
I'm not sure it's necessary yet. I just want to know sort of where we think it might fit in as we try to convince people to try them out.
Yeah, then we have the config file. Well, it reads a file from disk and uses that config, and that config overrides like what's in the cluster already. We can fetch, like when we do kubeadm init, hopefully from 1.7.3 on, we upload the configuration used, that config map, and then just reads it. And kubeconfig, which client to use for talking to the cluster, and print config, which we'll see in a minute. So now when I execute kubeadm kubeadm upgrade plan, it will do this kind of thing. Check that everything's healthy, reading configuration from the cluster, checking the cluster version, kubeadm client version, latest table, and patch kubedns versions. And then telling me that I have a 1.7.0 kubelet and I could upgrade it to 1.7.2. And yeah, sounds good to me to add something here, I guess, for like use your package manager or whatever to upgrade kubelet.
One small nit, this makes it look like I should upgrade my kubelet to 172 before upgrading my control plane. And in general, we recommend people doing it in the other direction. I think we technically sort of maybe are okay with version skew and patch versions where the kubelet goes ahead of the master a little bit, but we don't really test it very well. So it is true that those need to be upgraded manually, but the way it's printed out makes it look like you should do that first, which I think is incorrect.
Yeah, I'm happy to pre-order.
Put the word afterwards before the colon, for example.
Just one line change. Sounds good to me.
I have some sort of just very...
Or maybe switch, like put that above the you can now upgrade. So it says upgrade to latest patch and it shows you what's going to upgrade. Then tell people what they have to upgrade manually, and then say you can apply the upgrade, the automatic upgrade or whatever using the following command. Because then the very last piece of output you see is like, this is what I should do next. Right now it looks like what you should do next is upgrade your kubelet.
Yeah, I agree. It's not clear. I have some general feedback about this, which is just that I feel like the current output is, I feel like it's factually correct, but that if you think about the task that the user's trying to achieve from their perspective, it might not be the most optimal output. And I don't know what the answer is yet. I don't know what I don't have a concrete proposal for how to improve it yet, but I just want to say that that's how it makes me feel at the moment. So I'll probably think about it some more and maybe come up with some concrete suggestions for like maybe rearranging things a little bit, but I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I mean, comment on the PR. This is 20, 30 lines of code that actually output this, and there's 2,000 lines of code for actually like doing the other stuff or
yes,
something.
And I'm going to argue that these are the most important 30 lines of code in the whole change.
I don't think so, but...
Well, it has to actually work as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would be useless if it didn't do anything. Anyway, so that's that, and then we have apply, which looks like this. Let's see, dry run is not as I expected to see it, but yeah, I'll fix that. So we have dry run, false, and version, yes. Should we read from standard in? Like, so if yes is not specified, should we like say that this is what I'm gonna do? Press, like, write yes into your terminal or something to accept this thing? Or should we just proceed? I mean, should we do the apt-get kind of thing, or should we just say that, well...
What's the question that you would be asking the user?
Minus
do you
y
want to proceed?
YOLO.
Yeah.
G-Cloud has a similar thing where G-Cloud will like, do you want to create an instance, yes or no? And there's also a way to tell it like skip user input, like just go ahead and do it. And so for automation, you always pass the flag or set the environment to skip user input. But if someone's running interactively, then you prompt them to make sure that they aren't defaulting input.
Yeah, that's exactly my question.
In general, we should totally do it that way. My question was just like, what is the specific question that we need to ask the user ever?
Do you want to proceed?
Oh, do you want to proceed?
Yeah. Or something like that. I mean, if they specified dash yes or dash s yes or something, then we'd just do it on it interactively.
Oh yeah, like apt-get. Now that I think.
Yeah, exactly like apt-get. I mean, I think that's proven UX.
I'm good with that. I think it's a bit more cautious, but I think it's a better user experience, especially if you print what it's about to do before it does it.
Yes, I mean, it allows people to also not necessarily have to run the plan command. You just run upgrade apply. It'll basically just print the plan for you and ask you if you want to apply the plan, right? So I think that's also maybe a slightly more streamlined user experience too.
It's like apt-get meets Terraform.
Okay, so if I want to do an upgrade now, I just go ahead and specify the version. And it looks like this so far. Basically, it does the same thing in the beginning, like health checking does some things, and then pre-polling images for all. Let's see if they are still there. Yeah, so there we have 3 daemon set pods that are terminating, because I think there's a grace period of some seconds, which I'll remove in the next iteration. So this just deploys the image on all. Well, now the API server is 1, so this one API server, but in the future, all others as well. And one more thing, we could do plan print config. So for those who are really interested in what is exactly going to happen in the cluster, which options did I use like 3 months ago when I did kubedem init, what did I specify at the time? And then this kind of thing pops up. I mean, this is what kubedem reads. So I don't know if we should implement a general verbosity flag or just have one explicit that do you want to see the config or not? Or yeah, comment.
How do you show that config? Like the config that you used last time?
This is like it's fetched from the cluster or from your config file.
Yeah, but how does the user, how could the user show it?
With this flag, print config.
Oh, I can't see the bottom of you. Hang on, I can't see that on your screen.
Oh. Can you see it now? So I've typed kubedem upgrade plan print config.
No, I can't see that. Can anyone else see that on Lucas's screen?
Here
Are you
in the middle.
Terminal? Because you're only sharing one terminal window.
Yeah. I'm only sharing one and it's taking my full screen. So can you see my pointer?
Nope. Maybe turn it off and on again. The screen sharing, I mean.
Oh, that's now.
Oh, I can see your pointer. Oh, now I can see it.
Okay. Yeah, so there we go. I don't know what happened there, but
now what you were saying makes more sense, as well as the stuff about the terminating instances.
Yeah, so we could have this kind of flag to get exact information what options will kubedem use when taking these tasks for the really cautious one.
If you're going to print the config, don't print anything else, so that if automation wants to pipe it into a file for some reason, then they don't have to like grep out the upgrade lines around it.
I don't think that's necessarily useful, because you could just do kubectl kubesystem get cm kubedem config OYAML.
Yeah, you could do that. You could do that if you're Lucas, but if I'm like a user who doesn't know how to do that, then I can't do that.
I mean, it also says here, reading configuration from the cluster from config map kubedem config. I don't know if that's like clear enough, but
you could just replace the words in the brackets with the command that you could run if you want to get it.
I could do that, yeah.
I think that would be a better user experience, because I don't know how to do this, like how to type that command. I mean, I could figure it out by reading the docs and spending like 10 minutes figuring it out, but make it easy for me. I'm speaking as a potential user of this tool.
Yeah, I'll add a new line with that, I guess. Something below this line or something.
And I still think that print config should only print that config.
So my question was, should we start mucking with verbosity flags and levels and all this with like one simple command that shows this amount of output, or should we just have some small? I mean, this is essentially also print config. That's probably would be a better naming wording.
Okay, so add another subcommand called print config that isn't plan, and make it only print the config.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm
then
happy with that.
Instead of putting the long command in the brackets, you could say just run kubeadmin alpha upgrade print config to see this.
Well, it's not even upgrade, it's just kubeadmin print config, right? Because the config is separate from the upgrade subcommand.
Exactly, that's good. I like that, makes it shorter.
And that'll also be a good, like, if you were running an older version of kubeadmin that didn't put the config into a config map and you run kubeadmin print config and it says couldn't find it, that'll also be really helpful for people debugging if they're trying to run an upgrade and they need to pass in their own config because it doesn't exist in the config map. That'll make it more clear.
Yeah,
and
so
in that command, it'll say, sorry, it doesn't exist. You must have been running an older version of kubeadmin.
So one of the things I was thinking about is, should we, I mean, we should definitely allow upgrading without specifying a config file, but I mean, I also think we should warn. One common case is, well, you did kubeadm init and wanted to use flannel, and you specified like pod network subnet or whatever the flag is named in order to use flannel or calico or whatever that requires that flag. And then you forgot, well, kubeadm didn't upload the version, the config, and you can't remember you did that, you upgrade, and then you're stuck with a misconfigured cluster. So should we like, well, if I go ahead and delete this, then we can see what happens if I don't have a config. So if I run kubeadm upgrade plan again, it says this. I mean, it should probably be more visible or something, like printed in, or have a big warning or something. I couldn't find in cluster config. You didn't specify anything. And now, well, I don't know. I'm just using the default.
Yeah, you should at least spell out what the implications are to the user. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
I'm a big fan of, like, I know we don't actually do this much in kubeadm or in Kubernetes in general, but of just prompting and shelling to the editor for when we do configuration type of things. I did this before in some configuration management type of land where we had super complicated configurations that we had to deploy to multiple clusters. Oh my God, the world repeats itself. But but we literally punched up you do something config and it would punch up the config for you, and you could edit it live, and it would either pull or push based upon whether it had the data, right? And then whatever you saved, it automatically push. And it was a nice user experience. So it'd be like kubeadm config, and then you just punch up a default, and then it would save, or push at the back end.
So, I mean, this starts to sound like a new design proposal. kubeadm config command with like add, push, pull, get, fetch, like all the things.
I mean, we could start off with a simple kubeadmin config print, and then we could add the other stuff Tim's talking about later.
I can send you a link to like, it's literally 7 years old. The thing that we did on big grids back in the day, but it's almost analogous to exactly to this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would just say like my own personal opinion on the like launch an editor for the user to change some config thing. I have mixed feelings about that. It feels like kind of an advanced user tool. Not everyone is comfortable with a text editor on the console, and also you might not have your editor environment variables set to something you know how to use.
Should we default to like nano or?
No.
I think ed is a good default. Most systems still have that, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's
Sorry, I don't know. Can folks hear me? My audio is probably really awful right now. I'm muted. But kubectl already does a lot of this stuff, right? It already has an edit that pops up in your editor and edits a YAML and saves it. Is there a reason we need to put that in kubeatom instead of just referencing the right name for the big map?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to do something with that kind of like, if I had to do a kubeadmin command for editing the config, I think I would just shell out the kubectl for convenience.
cool. We are, by the way, about 10 minutes over time. I'm okay to stay for a few more minutes, but if people need to drop off, then that's okay.
I need to get going pretty shortly. Is there anything else we had on the agenda?
Let's check. I don't think so. So if you don't have any other comments, like I'll reorder, like I'll put this section here somewhere, and like directly after this general health checking thing, and so then this gets very visible, like this is what you should type. Then I might add the kubeadm print config thing. I also have the like PR and cherry pick for actually uploading the config ready probably by Monday, or yeah, by Monday. And what was this word should be serious. This should be more scary. Is that everything?
Just one other idea is, maybe this is obvious and you're going to do it already, but when the user actually does run the apply command, then you should print upgrade the kubelet as the next thing that they should do. Because I did one thing and it told me to do the next thing. Okay, I did the next thing, and now it's telling me to do the next thing that I need to do. And now at the end of that, maybe it's going to say, ta-da, you're finished. And then the user feels good. So yeah, just make it really easy and obvious what the next step is at each stage.
Yeah, that's absolutely going to be in the end of like the apply command.
Great. I think we're on a good track here then. Thanks for all your hard work, everyone. Yeah,
that sounds, I mean, yeah, also I can add the release candidate, allow release candidates. It's just some lines of code anyway, so.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Making it easy for people to test RCs is going to actually help the quality of the project. That's good.
Yeah. And I'll just go ahead and like actually implement the upgrade.
Yeah,
I guess doing it the hacky way now, and hope for the best with the daemon set real upgrades, or like at first delete them.
Sounds good. Awesome stuff. Well, happy weekend, everyone.
Yep, you too.
I'll upload the video according to the correct rules.
That's right, which I just recently learned.
Cool. Good stuff. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.